Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and this week's Spotlight on Story is A God Somewhere. Fantastic comic book. There's a Wildstorm imprint out of DC, and this happened in 2010. That was the original publication date. It's a pretty big book, all right? I haven't actually found individual chapters, but it seems as though there's supposed to be 4 different chapters in this. Basically, it's 198 pages of epic awesomeness. All right. First, now we have to get to the part where I butcher people's names. Okay. So the writer John Arcudi or Arcudi, or I don't know how to pronounce his name. There's also here's the really fun ones, the Danish type Nordic names. The artist Peter Snejbjerg, colorist Bjarne Hanson, letterer Wes Abbot, art director Larry Berry, and the editors are Scott Peterson and Peter Tomasi. What? Peter Tomasi. Wow. First off, Scott Peterson, who's currently writing the Batman Kings of Fear at the time that I'm making this thing, and Peter Tomasi, who is, freaking Peter Tomasi. So awesome. Awesome. If you love Super Sons, you love Peter Tomasi. So let's move on. Also, a special thanks to Ryan Sook. Excuse me. Thank you. What? So anyway, we're going to start off. Listen, this comic book, dude. This is a comic book basically about the very first superhero that is created in a random world. Okay? As if right here, today, all of a sudden, boom, we had a singular superhero. Sick. Okay. A lot of psychology in this, a little bit of theology, a whole lot of mind effing. Guys, real talk, put the kiddies to bed. This is a rough one. Okay, there is nudity in this book. There is, it's not like gratuitous or anything. It's just, there's a lot of blood also. And that's actually what we start off with. We start off with some kind of an explosion something, where basically the philosophy behind what's being said here is everybody is just a story, is just a character in someone else's story. None of us matter, meaning none of us really matter. We could all go at any moment. And that is the grim, stark reality of things. I know we all like to think we're special. God, how many of, pretty much all of us have survived something that we feel that we just should not have survived. In fact, maybe we survived dozens of things like that, but yeah, it's probability it could catch up with you. And we all feel special in some way, shape, or form until we no longer exist. It's a messed up thing. And the first page perfectly describes and illustrates that. Like, you want the setting of this book, just look at that first page, man. It is pure insanity. Pure insanity. So then we're going to go back a little bit. It doesn't necessarily say a couple days ago, but it's like a day or two ago, all right? Anyway, got a couple people hanging out. We got Eric and Eric and Sam are hanging out. They're two really close friends. And they're chilling, and they're looking at this girl, Alma, who is probably talking to her husband, and that's Eric's brother, Hugh. So both of them like Alma, but she's with Hugh. And this comes back. Both of these other guys like Alma. It's a messed up situation, all right? And there's constantly this idea of, they're not necessarily hitting on her, but they're real creepers, okay? It's like, dude, it's not your girl. Back off, all right? So Alma is married to Hugh. Anyway, Hugh and Eric, these two are brothers. They're hanging out. All 3 of these guys are sitting around talking about this boat. Alma comes in back and forth once in a while, making sandwiches. She's just being cool. And they're talking about buying this boat. When we retire, we're going to hang out, get this boat. It's going to be awesome. Sam is a black guy. Why does this matter? Well, in the comic book, since he hangs out with white guys, these 2 white guys specifically, back on the home front, would you say, whenever he meets some of his other kind of friends, not as friendly friends, they make fun of him for being not black enough. This happens. This is a real thing. And it's a funny thing because when he first moved to this new school, his father had gotten this really good job over on, I think they said Lockheed Martin. And he moves to this new school, everybody's white, and basically some guys come walking up in broad daylight in public in front of the school, like, hey, and they say something to him like, why are you here? How come you're not back on the block with your homies? If that's not something absolutely racist, I don't know what is. And Sam is a smart guy. He just looks at them and he's like, there is no right answer for this, is there? And they proceed to beat him up. And they say he's got a smart mouth. And you don't really need a whole lot of reasons to be a racist, do you? Just are. So they beat the snot out of this guy. And all of a sudden, Eric and Hugh show up. And they return the snot beatings. They beat the holy hell out of these guys. Basically, and Eric in particular, he has a little bit too much fun beating up on these guys, especially the leader of the pack. So they bring him to the hospital. I mean, he lost teeth. He's got his hand broken. Like, yeah, school nurse isn't quite going to do this, bro. Let's take you to the hospital. So they do, and he's just like, why do you care? And yeah, it's just the idea of, look, man, it's the right thing to do. I don't know what to tell you. Now, all throughout this, we always get the idea that Hugh is a good person. Eric, however, sees himself as a superhero in many regards. Many regards. Sam has always had a hard time understanding God. All right? Eric wants Sam to come with him to church, but he never really does. He never really goes to church with him. He just doesn't really believe in God. But he does. There's the idea of having belief and then having a belief in the organized version of what you believe and finding a group of people who agree with you, Anyway, these guys are all just hanging out. It's really late. It's time to go to bed. Good night. I'm out of here, And while they're hanging out, while they're doing whatever they're doing, Sam is just kind of off on his own. He's looking out over the city. He doesn't know what to do with his life. He genuinely just does not know what to do. And he's basically, what we're getting is that he's reading a lot about Black history. He dropped out of school. He's reading a lot about Black history. He doesn't really hang out with a lot of Black guys. So we see a little bit of, he's had a position in his life where he just doesn't know what to make of himself. And it's cool. I get it, because there's always going to be people who are trying to find out what your identity is. And if you're not fully sure of what your exact identity is, then yeah, of course, there's going to be questions. But he's really trying to find himself, basically. And he's not wrong for that. The only thing I blame him for is hitting on Alma a little bit too much, or fiending over her at least, because just come on, dude. He doesn't really hit on her. But he's a creeper. they're both creepers. They so anyway, he's just looking out in the distance. He's like, all right, I gotta go home. I gotta get some sleep. Whatever. Tomorrow's a new day. And then he goes back home, or as he's on his way home, all of a sudden there's this big meteor of some sort, and it crashes in his friend Eric's neighborhood. He's like, no way. What are the chances? And he swings by, and while there's damage all over the place, and this is where we actually see the first page. If it's a blink and you miss it kind of thing. We actually get to see that scene, the bottom panel scene on that first page right here. So we know that this is where the context of that was. But Eric goes up and he sees that, Sam goes up and sees that his friend Eric's building was hit. And he's able to run in because, he's right there on the scene. And he's there before any of the paramedics or anybody shows up. So he goes marching in and he sees Eric just sitting there while the building is wrecked. Eric is just kind of sitting there naked because he's, been blowed up. But he's perfectly fine in and of himself. And he just turns and he looks and he's like, hey, bud. And he's got this really cheesy smile on his face. That smile on his face stays with him for a really long time. It stays for a really long time. Eric is taken to the hospital. Sam goes also. He brings him there. And while there's all sorts of death and carnage and decimation everywhere, people just jacked up, they're foobarred. Eric is perfectly fine. And everybody's like, dude, what is this guy doing here? He's taking up a bed. The nurse is like, doctor, we need to take some blood samples because there's no way. He was at ground zero. There's no way that he should be okay. It's like, well, then take a, like he came in with a fever of 105 and now he's perfectly fine, but his white blood cells were off the roof like he had leukemia or something, but now he's fine. Like, okay, just take his blood and see what's up. Maybe you made a mistake. That's the problem, doctor. That's why we called you. His skin is like boot leather. We can't penetrate it with a needle. Oh, Superman. So this is the big question everybody's having. But while he's there, all of a sudden EMT workers come in like, guys, anybody who's here, who's, EMT, paramedic, firefighter, whatever, we need to get back down to the scene. There's still survivors. Help. So Eric hears that and he goes there himself. And he flies. Oh yeah, Superman. Dun, dun, dun. So he gets there on the scene. He's got his hospital gown on. That doesn't last for very long. And we see that he's basically got a chode. I said it. And he's going to pick up these building parts and he's going to rescue people. The firefighter, he's got that cheesy smile on his face the whole time. Oh, and I should mention, he was kind of upset that his brother Hugh didn't show up. Alma showed up, but Hugh didn't show up. Why? They bounced around to all these different hospitals. Oh, and mind you, this was 2010. While they do have a nice house, people usually have house phones in 2010. All right. So having a cell phone is something that sometimes people will share. There's no need to get rid of the house phone and just have two cell phones for, the husband and wife duo. But so back in the day when this was actually published, it was perfectly acceptable for one cell phone to exist amongst people. It happened. Anyway, so they're sharing a cell phone and it's like, hey, listen, he's got the cell phone. He dropped me off at this hospital. He's going to another hospital. Nobody's answering the phones at the hospital, so we're just stopping off and looking at all the hospitals to see where you were. I happen to get here at your hospital. He's driving to the next hospital. I'm going to go and get a payphone and call him and tell him to come to this hospital. By the time she's able to do that, though, Eric has already left. So he's just upset. He's like, everybody shows up except for my brother, So anyway, he goes and he rescues these people and whatnot. The fire chief is like, yeah, honestly, a lot of people have been saved because he came and he helped us out. So that's actually kind of a big deal. This comic book bounces around a lot. It's not ridiculously much like a Christopher Priest book. Now he's just called Priest. He went Madonna around. He's just got one name. Priest now, he'll bounce around all over the place. He won't tell you this, that, or it's just don't read his books linearly because you're not going to understand them that way. Instead, he takes a very non-linear approach to his writing. This book has kind of that way. You may get to the first panel and say, wait, what the heck is happening now? By the time you get to the second panel, though, you know exactly what's happening and where, in general, the time frame is of what you're reading. So it's expertly handled. If I were to say this book were a masterpiece, I don't think too many people could be that critical with me on that. It's just handled so well. The art is exactly where it needs to be. The writing is unbelievable. And just the plot, of course, is... who doesn't want to read a book like that, right? Everybody's got their own interpretation of what the first superhero would be like. But on top of that, just the structure, the format of this book, second to none. Second to none. Excellent book. So anyway, we go back in time a little bit and we see how everybody met Alma. Alma, who's not really in this book too much, right? She seems to be kind of important here. We'll see. So, basically, Eric just goes around and he's helping people. He's fighting crime. He's trying to protect his brother. He's looking out for his brother and his friend, but he's especially looking out for his brother. And he's like, this city, man, like it's dangerous. I don't like how dangerous this city is. And he goes to... police are getting killed at this one area. He just walks in and he just oh, bad guy, bow, smacks him. And like the guy's neck will get broken or whatever. He'll be put in traction. He's jacking people up. And it makes sense. This is a brand new superhero. He is not clowning around. The police are getting in a little bit of trouble. The city's getting in a little bit of trouble because it's like, hey, but everybody loves this guy. The police, the chief, everybody, they're making excuses for this guy. Look, should this guy be helping out? It's a realistic question. Should this guy actually be helping out? the parents of two criminals who got jacked up. They're suing the city. Hey, it was police who were supposed to stop my son from doing such and such, not this vigilante guy. The police just let him do this stuff, so we're suing. And it's like, dude, are you kidding me? He killed, there's 16 dead people out here. Some of them are cops. And you're suing us because, extremely violent force was used because somebody who you weren't expecting to kill. Come on, man. So the law is the law. You got to respect the law, right? But either way, the police are, instead of just saying, no, this got out of hand, he's a vigilante, he needs to be stopped, go after him. No, they're taking some of this brunt and they're saying, whatever, man, we love this guy. And this is a very important theme to the book also. The idea that Eric does always help people, doesn't always help people the way they expect they're going to be helped, but he does try. What do you call it? Sam, meanwhile, he's got the most contact with him. Hugh hasn't even seen his brother Eric in a while. Remember, Eric and Hugh are brothers. Eric is just out doing all these crazy things, and Hugh, and Alma, they don't really get the chance to see Eric very often. So his mother, Eric and Hugh's mother, is like, oh, I'm handling this. So on the phone for a really long time, finally, hey, we're going to meet him in church. He's going to be at church this Sunday. We're going to go there. She announces this at a party, though. So, of course, this information gets out, and the fire chiefs are outside, and they're stopping everybody from going inside, including Eric's mom, Hugh, and Alma. So nobody can get in. That actually also includes Sam. So nobody can get in. Church is packed now. And it's funny because since Hugh believes so much in Jesus, in religion, in Christianity in general, just believes in God so much. He's got the little Jesus fish symbol, you know what I'm saying, on his car and everything like that. He starts to actually believe that he is on par with maybe not necessarily Jesus, but Moses and Samson. He actually compares himself to Samson and everything like that. And pretty soon he starts comparing himself to God. Pretty soon he starts to not believe in God anymore, or he starts to believe that maybe God exists, but he's not necessarily good. Look at all the bad things that happen in the world, so maybe God's not necessarily good. Who said God was good, right? So it gets very philosophical. The book gets a little loco, man. It gets a little loco. Eric has pretty much shielded himself, and I'm using that word very, very purposeful, very intentfully. He is shielding himself from people, and unfortunately that also includes his brother, but he is trying to help, though, and he's trying to, he finally meets up with his brother at one point, and he's like, hey man, I want you to move out of this neighborhood. There were two, crime reportings recently. He's like, dude, what? He's like, I rescued this one realtor. They're willing to give you a much bigger house in a much better neighborhood in order for you to, move there, and you'll be paying the exact same price as this place, man. He's going to do it for me. So come on, man, just let's move you out of here. He's like, I like being here. Stop trying to control my life, And Eric's he's not happy with it, At one point, he's going to go up and meet with the president, but he's not even as concerned with the president as he is with the mayor of this. They're in California, by the way. This Southern California, SoCal area that they're in. He's like, hey, Mr. Mayor, why aren't there more police in this neighborhood? What's going on? And being a politician, after this guy, he kind of leaves in a huff. Eric goes and flies away in a huff. He goes over to one of his, his people, and he's like, hey, find out why he cares so much about this particular neighborhood. So they do. It sounds kind of sleazy, right? But at the same time, it makes sense, doesn't it? So they realize, oh, his brother lives in the neighborhood. He's worried about his brother and his sister-in-law. Okay, I get it. So the police start putting 24-hour watch on this house, to make sure that no criminals, no burglars or anything show up. It's like, hey, listen, he doesn't actually care about anybody else in that regard. He's just really worried about his brother. So his brother goes and decides to buy the sailboat that Eric is the one who actually brought it up in the first place. He's like, hey man, check it out. I'm going to buy the sailboat. Maybe this is a way that we can all just, be together and hang out. And Eric's not happy about that. He shows up at the sailboat with his brother Hugh there. And he's like, what are you getting this boat for? You're getting my boat. He's like, no, it was supposed to be our boat. You came up with the idea, but we were all supposed to get it. I was supposed to pay half, right? Because it's me and Alma. So I was going to pay half anyways. I just decided to buy the whole thing. He's like, so you can get away from me? The guy can fly. How is he going to get away from you on the water? So, what are you, a vampire? So he's like, no, not at all. He's like, dude, I told you should move. Come on. Take that other house that I'm talking about. Come on, just move. He's like, I don't know what I would do if something ever happened to you. He's like, what would you do? He's like, would you fly in and beat up and kill the people who hurt me? Like, what the hell? Stop trying to control my life. Brother's not having that, so Eric just flies off in a huff. He's very dissatisfied with that answer. Sam, in the meantime, is still his best friend. He does still get a lot of access with him, and he's actually starting to have a place in society because people are coming to him because he's the one who's willing to talk about his friend. He's the insider with the most information that he's willing to give. Hugh doesn't want to talk to them. Alma doesn't want to talk to these reporters. Sam, however, is like, ooh, I've got a place here. You know what I'm saying? They don't have access to Eric, but they do have access to me, and I'm willing to give it back. So, ding. So these guys are all just hanging. They're doing their things, basically. And at one point, Eric goes and meets with the president. And this is where, he just got back from the whole boat thing. And he's really kind of upset right now with, what's his face? His brother. He's really upset with his brother. So he leaves. And he goes and hangs out with the president a little bit. He's in such a bad mood that he's just like, you guys are just a bunch of stupid men. The mayor is like, no, dude, I got extra detail on your brother. You know what I'm saying? I'm making sure that he's going to be safe and all that stuff. He's like, okay, but I'm looking at your faces. I'm a hero. And you guys are afraid of me. What's going on? This is just stupid. He's just projecting, basically. And he winds up making everybody afraid of him. He screams, and the power of his scream kind of, boom, pushes everywhere. Mind you, he was wet. He just came in from the rain, and everybody was offering him a towel. Here's something that happens that kind of changes, not the tone of the book, because the tone of the book has changed here also. It changes in the next couple panels even more, but more specifically, the idea of what his powers are changes. Because the one guy's got a towel, and Eric reaches out and makes the towel come to his hand. Interesting. So we shoot to a scene of the police. They're doing like a changing of the guard, and they're like, oh yeah, that's the house we're supposed to get. We're a little bit late. Hey, the door's open a little bit. What's going on? Oh shoot! Oh my God, the mayor's going to kill us if somebody broke in there and we weren't here. So they go in and they see the place is a mess. There's blood stains everywhere. Hugh is hurt. Eric is standing there, and he just raped Alma. That's how the book, the tone of the book completely shifts. So now we're halfway through the book. All right. We see that Hugh is left a quadriplegic. Granted, he can move his right hand a little bit, but for the most part, he's a quadriplegic at this point. Sam can't believe what's happening. Alma doesn't want to talk to anybody, especially guys, because she was just freaking raped. These two have a hard time. Like, for the rest of the book, these two have a very hard time together. It's really hard. She's constantly spaced and just like, oh my God, what's going on in life? He's a quadriplegic, so he's feeling like crap. It reminds me a lot of the Christopher Reeve situation, which I wonder if that was intentful here, even though it was kind of shifted to a brother as opposed to he himself. But he mentions, like, why don't you just leave me, Alma? And it's so sad, man. But at the same time, she does love him. They really did have an absolutely fantastic relationship, but she's been affected too, just like he has. just, differently, but nonetheless, they've both been affected different ways by the same person, and they're both very extremely traumatic, and there was a huge trust broken. So I understand both of them, but they do stay together. So for the sake of conversation, they do stay together for the rest of the book. They still seem to be the most happy of everybody there at first. Sam goes to meet up with Eric. Eric turned himself into police. He's put in prison, and he just goes and he's like, dude, what's going on? The police go and grab Sam. He's like, listen, I need you to come. He's like, dude, the police grabbed me. They're like, the only reason why you came here was because they promised that you'd be able to talk to me. What's going on, dude? I'm here. What did you do? Why did you do this stuff? And he's like, because what's it all matter? What's it all matter? Really? Really? This sounds a lot like the Invisible Man conundrum. I believe it was Socrates. It might have been Plato. I think it was Plato. He'd mentioned how what people would actually be like if they had some kind of a superpower, and the example he used was invisibility. And you look at every single Invisible Man story for the most part, and you could see, yeah, people would be bad people. If they had the invisibility power, they'd be very bad people. Anyway, here's where the whole God thing really comes to bear a lot. Eric is, like, I had a dream that I was actually from a different dimension, and that I was worshipped by these people, and it was a much smaller dimension, but then I came to this dimension instead, and now I'm establishing myself here, and I woke up, but I started thinking, what if the people back in the other dimension didn't even realize I'd left, but they're still praying to me? Maybe this is just a dream. Maybe this is his psychosis. This could be his id talking to him. Maybe, for crying out loud, maybe this is true, because we don't know what that meteor actually was. Did it possess him? So it's really messed up. Anyway, they're just not having a good time of it with each other, and at one point, Eric just gets mad, and he turns and he points at the wall and blows a hole right through it, and walks outside, and all the police, they're militarized police, mind you. This might be the one time when I feel that it's a good idea to have militarized police in a superhero setting. But anyway, he kills all of these guys. He kills all of them. Sam is jacked up, and he comes walking out after it's all over. Like, they shoot him with artillery and everything, and he just gets mad. He starts ripping off people's heads and everything. He picks up a tank and throws it into a building. Jacks up all those people. He's not saving people anymore. And here's another scene where they show a bit more nudity when the building gets destroyed, but it makes sense why this would happen, because why the nudity would be shown, because he throws the tank into the building. The building is wrecked. It's just destroyed. And then you see like a baby flying. You see a naked couple flying. You see, a bunch of other people flying. And they show you like these are regular people just going about their business. And oh my God, it's like, this is a horrifying scene. Like, for me, it looks funny. I'm sure that some people, it'll look funny, at first, but looking at it the second time, I'm just like, wow, these are literally people who, like, right now, what if a tank went flying through, my home, through my neighborhood? I'm just sitting here trying to record a video, man. I got nothing to do with anything out there. It hit home. People just going about their lives, and all of a sudden, everything's just torn, We start to see, so anyway, he did that telekinetic blast, and when Sam comes out, he says, hey man, like, this guy, Eric already left, he's like, he could have just flown away. He didn't have to kill all these people. He could have just flown away. Like, there's a part where Eric actually walks and he sees this guy sitting there. Well, and they keep on saying, like, Adam, Charlie, Tango. Maybe that's what they say in the police. In the military, we say Alpha. The Charlie, Tango, Hotel, Lima, all that stuff. We say those things, but for A, we don't use Adam. We use Alpha. So Adam, I guess, yeah, I think 1 Adam 12. I think that is a police thing. So anyhow, they come across the military later. You have the Incredible Hulk syndrome, where the military is like your worst enemy. So I like how they go through a couple of different superhero tropes here and there. Like he was Spider-Man at one point, he was Batman at one point, in his methodology of taking out criminals and just the way he thinks and his sense of responsibility and all that, the way that he views the world. So another thing you start to see about his power is that he starts to get fat, all right? Because he's just, looks like he's really lethargic, you know? Not even that he's eating too much necessarily, but he's starting to get a little bit, heavy around the waist. And all of this is coming and making sense to me because later on they say in the military, we've discovered that his powers seem to be telekinetic in nature, all right? Nobody ever believed in this stuff before, but all of a sudden they really believe in it now, all right? He has telekinesis. That is what's actually happening. So he's always got this shield around him. I told you, I used that word with intent before. He's got this little shield, and we come to find out it extends about a foot around him, maybe a foot around him in total, so nobody can get anywhere near his skin, all right? So he's always got that up. Every time he'll punch things, it's just his shield, and his intent to, boom, punch through things. That's what's actually happening. But now he's learning more about his power. Now he can start to project these things. Also where the flight is coming from, all of that. So, okay, all this stuff is starting to make sense. Totally freaking cool, right? Not for everybody else, for him. So, Sam is actually offered a job at Timely. Okay, I guess it's supposed to be like Time magazine instead of Timely Comics. He's offered a job as a writer, reporter for this magazine. The military is giving him exclusive access because he was the friend of this guy, and it's going to give a good, play. It's like this guy was a hero. Not everybody sees him as a villain just yet, so, And basically, he's going out there, and he goes and it's funny, he hires two of his friends to be the cameraman and photographer, right? And the whole entire time, they're just ranking on him, again, for not being black enough. So, wow, you really want to isolate this guy, so the only real friend he seems to have is Eric. Yeah. Way to go, bud. Way to go. So, the military has discovered what his powers actually are. And in doing so, they have decided that we can make some kind of a laser. You see, light we can see him, so obviously light is able to get to him. So the telekinesis can't block out light. Only kinetic attacks, not a pure energy attack like a laser. So they devised this laser. They should have made more than one, just saying. And they're able to really jack him up. No, legit, they start jacking him up. They shoot him in the leg, like his bones are showing. They shoot him through the gut. They just start jacking this dude up, and there's nothing he can really do about it except try to get away. But they keep on blasting him. So he is able to get away. At one point, he just, by the final chapter, he winds up falling out the sky. These guys wind up breaking down one of the APCs, an armored personnel vehicle, armored personnel carrier, APC. It breaks down. And the other guys are like, we got to go. We're fully loaded, but we can fit one of you guys on. Hey, Sam, do you want to come? And of course, the other, his black friends are like, yo, that's messed up, man. Like, you're on the in crowd. Wow. Maybe if you didn't rag on him all the time. So anyway, he decides to stay. I guess it's a good thing they decide to stay because they discover the body of Eric. He's actually alive, but yeah, he was sleeping, I guess. He's trying to regain his energy. These guys show up. They're taking video all around him, shooting him from every angle, with the cameras. They don't actually have any guns or anything like that. And the radio wasn't working. They couldn't reach the other guys and be like, come back, he's right here. So Eric wakes up, and he immediately just evaporates everybody there, except for Sam. Leaves Sam alone. He and Sam, they go flying up to the to this cave in this mountain range. They're just chilling out. It's funny. Eric says at one point, "Why can't you guys just leave me alone? Leave Hulk alone or Hulk smash." Yeah. So he just starts talking to him, and Sam is asking all these questions. Eric is only trying to answer the first one. All right, like, who do you think you are, basically? Why are you doing this stuff? And he starts giving his philosophy, but Eric isn't able to get through to Sam. So he gives this Sam goes and writes this story called Thunderstorms Bringing Rain and Lightning. And it's really good because this is basically the direct words of Eric. Now, Eric is kind of suffering from a bit of PTSD. He doesn't want to admit it, whatever it is, what it is. And it takes a while for us to finally realize what had happened because Eric does get killed. Eric does eventually, like, they bring the laser back and they kill Eric. But Sam is trying to live his life, and people are like, oh my God, this was the greatest article ever written. It's so meaningful and blah, 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 blah. And all of it, of course, is just because he was there. Now, he doesn't want to write a follow-up story. He doesn't want to write the book about it. And that's the killer part. He just doesn't want to write the book about it. He's like, I'm friends with all these people. It just feels weird to profit off of people's secrets and stories and stuff like that and whatever. And they're telling him, it's like, somebody else is going to write this book. Somebody else is going to write this book, man. So it might as well be you. He's like, I just did this report on, social class and immigration and racism, and I'm doing all this. You telling me you don't like these things? He's like, maybe this is the only... He's like, I got to stop trying to be your friend here, and I'm talking to you like your publisher, like your editor. Dude, maybe this is the only story you've got. So write it. Stop trying to write all this other stuff. And he's not. He's not. Anyway, he was paid for the year. He got himself a nice car. He's living a fairly decent life. He's like, you know what? Screw this, I'm out. So he leaves, and we start to see like these cults forming around Eric. All right? Eric is dead. Eric is gone. But there's these people. They start repeating some of the things that he was witnessed as saying, or things out of Sam's article that he was quoted as saying. And these people are starting to kind of act like Eric. And it's a really messed up sort of situation. Sam wants to go and visit Hugh, and especially Alma. And when he goes there, Alma shows up at the doors like, oh, hey, Sam. And he's like, oh, hey, Alma. And they hug. And the next things we see, meanwhile, Hugh is in the other room, but Sam, we see that a later scene, Sam is married and has kids with Alma. And I know what I said before, right? It's a weird kind of thing. But the way that it finishes up is we realize that all this was just a dream. Like, he still has these feelings for her. And it's like, dude, grow up. She's not yours. It's so creepy. It's so creepy. Because this thing is that we know that Eric had these same dreams. And when he had the power to make all of his dreams come true, what did he do? Raped Alma. Now, why is all of this significant? Anyway, he goes and sees these guys, and they're still together, and then he's like, all right, it was good seeing you guys, and he leaves, assumingly never to see them again. And that's actually a really good thing. Why do I say that? We come to realize that Eric didn't want to live anymore. So the reason why he was able to be killed was because there was these guys coming with these nuclear bombs, 2 of them, and he directed them to... He saw them coming, and he telekinetically controlled the bombs and made them come down to hit him. I think there had to have been a little bit more space between, but I'm just looking at this as an engineer, who cares? But the idea is, once the first bomb hits, there's going to be X-ray. They don't actually say this here. This is just me formulating on this. Once the first bomb hits, they're going to be X-rays. So he's not going to be hurt. You'd assume he's not going to be hurt by the first nuclear explosion, right? But as soon as they hit, one of the things that you see are X-rays, in that flash bang. In that first flash, before the fireball hits, way before the shockwave hits, there's X-rays when you're within a certain area. Every radiation you can imagine, all right, shows up there, but X-rays is one of these spectrums. That's not a spectrum, but one of the effects. The X-rays everywhere. So in all reality, if you put your hands on your eyes and close your eyes and cover your eyes with your hands and whatever, you're going to see through your hands. You're going to see the bones and everything. You're going to see the bones of the people standing in front of you. There's going to be a flash of X-rays. So once that happens, any other damage, particularly heat damage, is going to get through. So if for some reason that first bomb doesn't get rid of you, that second bomb has full access to you at this point. So Boom, daddy. That's what I'm talking about. So, yes, this is an awesome way to kill somebody with massive amounts of telekinetic powers. Professor Bill fully supports this method of destruction for telekinetic, whatever. If Jean Grey goes out of control, that's what we got to do, all right? Not one bomb, 2 bombs. So, he does die. He's dead. He wanted to die. He basically committed suicide. But before he died, we get to see this interesting part. He picks up, he's able to, stand because he's using telekinesis, but he picks up Sam, and he says, I can't seem to make you understand by what I'm saying, but that's okay. I'm going to show you. And he throws him. He throws him out the cave, and he goes flying, like really freaking far away, likely out of the range of these bombs that are coming. And just before he lands, he suddenly realizes, I don't have to die, Sam says. Because it looks like whether he gave him a portion of his powers or all of his powers, Sam now has the ability to fly. He now has these powers. So maybe that's why Eric died, because he'd given all of his powers over to Sam, or just a portion of them, whatever. And maybe it was only a temporary thing. Who knows? We're not entirely sure what's up, but he was able to fly up, and he saw the jets as they were flying over there to bomb him, and yeah, we don't actually see him using his powers anymore. But this puts a huge shift on things. He doesn't care about a book. Oh no, somebody else came along and wrote the book anyway. And coincidentally enough, it was one of the survivors from the first attack. When the place was destroyed and when Eric first got his powers, he was brought to the hospital. Then he left the hospital to go back and help people. One of the people he helped was this blonde chick, basically. He went back and he was able to hold up the side of the building, and some rescue workers came in. One of the rescue workers, actually one of the police or whatever, was actually one of the guys who came up and found her, and they wound up getting married. They had a kid. And then he was actually one of the people who went after that final battle, one of those final battles, to go after this knucklehead, Eric. And he wound up getting killed and eviscerated in there. So it's funny. It's like, saved her life, but killed her husband, the father of her child. Wow. So yeah, I'm totally cool with her writing that book instead. She definitely has a say in his story at this point, because their stories are irrevocably tied to each other. Wow. It's like they thought of everything in this book, But the idea that Sam now has these powers, and in my mind, in my headcanon, he permanently has these powers. They were permanently shifted over there. It seems that he was able to pull down these bombs, on his own. So he definitely still had some of his powers, whatever. But I guess he let down his shield. He was doing like a meditation thing and let down his shield, whatever. Who knows? Who cares? He was going to die either way, right? So there's always a lot to guess. They don't just tell you this is what happened. And that's one of the things I love about books. I love when a book, comic book or whatever, will not just dumb it down and say, so this is what happened, little boys and girls. No, that doesn't happen here. They leave a lot for the imagination. So again, does Sam permanently have these powers? I don't actually know, but he was able to control his flight. So does he continue to have these powers? Were these powers transferred to him? I would say at least partially, yes. I would say yes. Because that makes this final scene with him and Alma all the more real. When he imagines himself married to her and they're having kids together and he's going out to work and, in the car and doing whatever, if he does still have these powers, he would be able to take what he wanted. But he doesn't. He chooses not to, making him, by default, a better person than Eric. This was a really solid comic book. Like, this was a solid comic book, man. I got this on sale online on Comixology. You got to look out for those sales, guys. And Comixology needs to freaking, not just, I don't even want a shout out from them. No. I want to be a paid sponsor. All right. I want them to actually pay me to advertise their stuff, for crying out loud. I advertise so much of their stuff, but nonetheless, yeah, watch out for those sales. So the day that I'm recording this, I'd actually gotten 2 days ago, just 2 days ago, I'd actually gotten it on sale digitally, and I couldn't pass it up because one of my subs, I forget whom, but one of my subs actually said, hey man, check it out. So one of the alumni of Comic Book University, and I just simply have to say, thank you very much. And I'm pretty sure in the comments, he's going to be like, you're welcome very much. So generally, from my heart, this was a solid comic book, man. 2010, and somehow I missed this. Actually, not somehow. The very following year, I moved to Saudi Arabia. So I lost all of my stuff at that point. So it makes sense. Anyway, absolutely amazing comic book, man. This was such a tremendously good read. And again, there's still a lot more in this story that I'm not touching on. Because why would I? There's got to be a lot for you to go in and actually deduce for yourself. And there's so much on a second read. Like I did a second skim through. And of course, I was just looking just now when I was doing all this. Man, there is so much to unpack in this. You can't do it in just the one read through. So it's definitely worth a second reading, possibly a third. Fantastic book. I could not possibly recommend this enough. This definitely gets my highest praises. This is a glorious book. More like this, please. All right, guys, that's it for me. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.